Hi, I'm Lee.
And I'm Grant. And this is Tabletop Tech Talk. We are independent photographers and filmmakers, and we wanted to just start a podcast kind of series about relevant and current technology and how it kind of affects us. A lot of it's going to have to do with the digital imaging world, cameras, lenses, drones, stuff like that, but also some other stuff that just goes into our daily lives that also fits in with technology that we use every day.
Grant and I are very much immersed in the technology world, so we're going to have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of new rumors and news, first impressions. The channel will be mostly the first impressions of what we expect to come from the technology world. Are certain cameras worth it? Are computers worth it? Phones? What we personally will be using, what we carry around every day. Mm-hmm. And we're excited to share it with you guys and see how this goes.
It's going to be fun.
So just the other day, DJI came out with two new drones, the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic Zoom. Mm-hmm. What are your first impressions?
They look really, really good. DJI has been a really hard company to beat. A lot of people are just like kind of trailed behind. There are a lot of people making drones out there, but no one's really doing it like DJI is doing it. They're coming to the market first with new items that other drone manufacturers are taking and implementing into their drones. So DJI is definitely leading the market in a lot of drone technologies that we have today, which is really cool. I'm a super big fan of the Mavic 2 Pro. I love them both a lot, but more as a photographer than a filmmaker or videographer. Although I still do a little bit of it, I think I would get more use out of the 1-inch Hasselblad sensor with the color profiles that come with that and stuff too. The dynamic range of it, the HDR modes and stuff like that. I think that would benefit me a little bit more. What about you?
I mean, as a Mavic Pro's the first generation user, I love the drone. I mean, going from using a Phantom 4 Pro, using an Inspire 1, I've even dabbled with an Inspire 2. I still think the Mavic, just for the convenience of the size and like traveling with it on a plane, you really can't beat it. And the image quality is still fine. I have no issues with the image quality. Now, it would be cool to have optical zoom for the dolly zoom feature, because you can do that in editing software, but you're really cropping down the sensor when you do that. So you lose a little bit of resolution, which can be a problem, but I'm still happy with the sensor size. So I think, to me, I like the zoom. I mean, you get improved battery life, you get improved flight time, a little bit more, much better optical avoidance, better navigation now.
Absolutely.
The new TrueSense stuff is really cool.
Incredible.
But I think, to me, I really like the Mavic Zoom. But unless DJI puts out a firmware update for hyperlapse feature, then I don't think it's worth me switching.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. There's a few things that they definitely could have like released in a firmware update, but I mean, it makes sense not to for finances of the company. But I know a lot of people were doing that hyperlapse thing themselves the hard way.
People were doing the hyperlapse feature. They were doing it the hard way, but the built-in navigation with the new optical avoidance and stuff like that, I really think it's worth it to have that. But I really think DJI could put out a firmware update for the current Mavics, but they're not going to, because that's how they make their money.
It makes sense. We wish they would, and hopefully they will in maybe a year's time or 6 months' time after everyone's kind of gotten the Mavic 2 out of their system. That'd be really, really cool, but it makes sense for them not to keep people moving up in their brain. It's a smart play. But regardless, they're phenomenal drones. I would love to have the Mavic 2 Pro with the Hasselblad. I don't think I'm going to put myself out there right now. Yeah. Because I don't do much aerial photography. Where we live and reside, there's not too much going on that looks phenomenal aerial-wise. Like, you got like crazy mountains. Those places look really good. Waterfalls, massive city skylines. Like, those are some really cool places to do drone work. We don't have too much of that here. So I'd love one day, but I don't think I'm going to get one right now.
And I'm right there with you. I mean, I think I'm just going to hold on to my first-gen Mavic and keep using it for what it's worth, because realistically, I don't use the drone as much as I would like to.
Mm-hmm. That was my thing. I had a Phantom 2. We can cut this out if we want to, but I had a Phantom 2 a while ago. I bought it used, and that was back when DJI's cameras were so bad the GoPro footage looked better, and at the time it was the current GoPro was the Hero 3 Black. Like, that's how bad their cameras were. And so I had to go buy my own gimbal and GoPro and flight control to
the
elevation.
Bluetooth
Yep,
connector.
it was like $2,000 for something that didn't even have obstacle avoidance, that had a 20-minute flight time, that didn't even shoot 4K. It was incredible how far DJI has come. It's insane. I wish I had used my Phantom 2 for more though, like you were saying. But okay.
Nikon Z7 and Z6.
Nikon's new mirrorless cameras, the Z line. They're gonna hate that I said that.
The Z line. Well, if you're from
they
Europe.
made such a huge deal that it's pronounced Z, and they put in quotes the letter Z and then 2 letter E's after it. Like they want people to make sure they pronounce it correctly. So I did that to kind of.
I think if their priority was hardware in the camera, they would have been able to make a better camera rather than their priority being how they pronounce the name of the camera.
Shots fired.
Just saying.
Anyways, I think it's a really solid attempt. They definitely could have done worse. They definitely could have not put as much effort into it as they did. They definitely could have cut corners more than they already did. And
they could have done better too.
they could have done worse, but they could have done better. And a lot of people, there's definitely 2 camps, and they're both very heated about their argument for why they think it's the best thing ever or why they think it's the worst thing ever. Me personally, as a pro shooter, I cannot shoot on a camera with less than 2 memory cards. I can't shoot on a camera with 1 memory card. Thankfully, I've never had a memory card fail, but I'm planning for the day when I do, because it happens to everyone. And you don't get to shoot a wedding again. You don't get to, a lot of times, shoot a commercial again, because with actors and stuff like that. So the value of having 2 memory cards is invaluable. And having only 1 memory card, granted it's an XQD card, it's a very, very high and very fast memory card that they put in the Z7 and the Z6, but having 1 is a big deal breaker for a lot of pros out there. A lot of pros. Now, some people only shoot 1 memory card. That's totally fine. Definitely a personal choice there, but there's a lot of reasons why you would want to. I'm more a fan of a Z6 than the Z7.
Why is that?
The Z6, I think, is the perfect start to get into full frame. There's a few things missing. There's no dual card slot. There's no eye autofocus. There's a few other things like that. But it's so much better than a D750. Much better than a 610. And if you don't want to spend the money on a Z7 or an 850, I think it's a really, really, really good spot to jump into full frame for that right around $2,000 price.
If you're a Nikon shooter already.
This is true. There's nothing about that camera that makes me want to go from Canon to Nikon.
No, and I don't think it makes anyone want to switch from their current brand loyalty over to Nikon. I mean, if you're currently a Nikon shooter and you have some decent glass, I mean, I'm not talking about your kit lens. I'm not talking about your 51.8.
Yep.
I'm talking about if you have good, decent, high-end glass,
yep,
then maybe you can switch over to the Z6 or the Z7. Mm-hmm. They do include the the F-mount adapter in the box,
yeah.
But it's, to me, adapters fail. They're slow. Mm-hmm. You lose accuracy, and it's almost $250 if you lose it.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait. I think it's going to be more of like a waiting game, so we're going to have to wait and see how reliable that adapter is, how quick it is, because native adapters usually do better than third party, but still it's not it's native, but it's not the same mount native. So right. I see what you're saying there, but I think that's going to be a test of time. Definitely, I don't see anyone leaving their brand loyalty for this. Sony's got more. Sony does better for a $2,000 camera.
For less money. For
this A7 III is a better camera than the Z6.
Right.
But if I was a Nikon shooter and I wanted to go from crop sensor to full frame, the only camera I would be looking at would be the Z6.
I mean, I disagree. Like, if you're going from a crop sensor camera, odds are you don't have high-end glass. So if you think about it, like someone who's an intermediate shooter who's going out, I mean, sure, they might have 1 or 2 decently high-end
I can see that.
lenses, but if you're going to switch, you're still going to be getting that adapter when realistically you could probably sell all your stuff, buy an A7 III or even an R3 mm-hmm. at a cheaper price than the Z7.
Yeah.
And then just go with native Sony glass and you don't have to worry about adapters. You don't have to worry. And you gain eye autofocus, you gain 2 card slots, and you gain better and faster autofocusing.
Right. There was yeah, I get that. But you probably also have a few shooters out there, like your sports and wildlife shooters, that are using the D500. A crop sensor, but a very, very nice crop sensor.
Right.
But if they ever wanted to move to full frame, or some people invest in really, really nice glass before bodies. And granted, it's not as many people out there as probably the scenario you're mentioning, but there are people out there with 7200 2.8s on a 7500.
This is true.
A D7500. So that would be kind of my market. If I was there, if I was a D7500 shooter, a 5600 shooter, had a little bit of glass under my belt and stuff like that, and I wanted to move full frame, there's a lot that would tempt me to go to Sony. But if I was brand loyal like I am with Canon, like there's just no way to pull me away from Canon. then the Z6 is really what I'd be looking for that kind of stuff. The Z7's as phenomenal of a camera as it is, it's got pro specs. It looks like they were really targeting professional photographers with that, because it's hard to go out and blow $3,000 on a camera, $3,500 on a camera when you're not a professional. But they didn't include one or two things that pros are looking for.
Right.
So I can kind of see why they did it. It's not planned obsolescence, but I think they're leaving room for them in the future.
Yeah, leaving room to come out with a better camera.
The Z7 II or whatever it's going to be in 5 years' time, 3 years' time, definitely gives them a lot of room to increase. Moving that ISO from 25,000 to 51,000, that'd be an absolute must with version 2 of this. 2 dual card slots. Eye autofocus, just to mention a few things. So it seems like they wanted it to be for a pro, but they also wanted to leave room for themselves in the future. Those are kind of my opinions on it.
I just don't think, I can't see anyone who's not already a high-end Nikon shooter switching over to the mirrorless.
Yeah.
It's a smaller system, but $3,400 for the D7 or right around $3,000 for the D850.
Right.
I would go the D850 route.
I would too. Yeah, if you're going pro, you're looking to spend $3,000, between $3,000 and $3,500 on a camera, and you're making money with it. It's a profession. I think your eye should be more on the D850 than the Z7. Again, a personal choice.
Right.
Some people just can't physically hold those cameras. I've got a lot of people that I know who are retired or younger or smaller. Old people.
So really, I mean, I like the mirrorless. I'm a Sony shooter. I like the mirrorless. I like the size.
Mirrorless technology in general is phenomenal, and it's definitely the way cameras are going.
Right.
Nikon made a really solid first attempt. They did some really cool stuff. They left a lot of room for them to improve in the future. But only time will really tell how Nikon users grab onto the Z series.
And speaking of mirrorless, Canon mirrorless, what are the rumors?
Canon mirrorless. So Canon's got a few mirrorless cameras out there already. The M50 being the most recent release of them. There's several rumors floating around about Canon's full-frame mirrorless camera, and we are getting really close to Photokina event coming up here at the end of next month, if I'm not mistaken. And usually there's so much that goes on at Photokina. NAB and Photokina are two of our biggest camera shows out there that we watch, and for new equipment. And it's been interesting. I was reading something. It is unusually quiet from Canon right now, which is interesting because usually when we're getting this close to a camera release, we have heard a lot more about that camera by now than what we have heard right now. So it's a huge sign on Canon has significantly clamped down and shut down on leaked information. So kudos to them because they're fixing a big problem. But also bad at the same time because we really are in the dark. We don't know what's coming and we don't know when it's coming. But it's looking like either right before Photokina or during Photokina we possibly might get either like a development announcement or something like that about Canon's full-frame mirrorless camera. And it's looking interesting. There's really not too much to go on with it, but there's a lot of people waiting for it.
And hopefully, if they go full-frame, maybe they can have an EF mount.
That would be really cool. I've heard rumors that they're kind of talking with that. I do know just the physics behind that are incredibly difficult.
Right.
The flange distance of cameras and stuff like that, the distance between the rear element of the lens and the imaging sensor plays a huge role on mount style and dynamics.
Right.
and why there has to be a new line of lenses when a camera comes out. So if they can make it EF, that'd be phenomenal because people might leave Nikon to get a full frame to have native full frame glass that's been around. Like Canon's been around since 1934, right. And they started making optics before they started making cameras, and so they've been doing it for a really, really long time. They have some really, really solid glass for fairly affordable compared to your Nikon and Sony counterparts. Sony people are pretty invested by now. It's been over a decade of Sony mirrorless cameras, and they have a lot of really good lenses now that they used to not to.
Right.
I don't see very many. If Canon's full-frame mirrorless was a banger and had a native EF mount, I think it might pull a few people like who were Canon shooters who left for Sony. They might come back to Canon.
I was gonna say, but a lot of people bought the adapters to shoot Canon lenses on Sony.
Yep, absolutely. I just don't see people leaving Sony to come to Canon for that. If people are already invested in Sony. Right. Now Nikon, with how close the Canon Mirrorless release update is going to be to what Nikon just came out, it's going to be interesting to see the market share fight over that for that holiday season.
Exactly.
It's going to be interesting.
So we can only just wait from here.
Time will tell.
Samsung released a brand new phone yesterday, the Note 9.
The Note 9.
Phenomenal phone. Still an iPhone user. Also still an iPhone user, but it's a great phone. And they also released a new watch. Biggest battery life that we've seen on a phone yet, or a flagship phone, I should say. Right. The new S Pen.
That's pretty cool.
That has some cool stuff for the pen. You can take screenshots and photos with it.
It's really cool.
Android Pie works really well from what I hear on it. I still prefer the pure Android experience that Pixel gives you.
Right.
But the Samsung Note 9, a lot of people love it. I mean, it's not a bomb. It doesn't blow up or catch on fire. And it's a Samsung phone, so your Samsung users are probably going to fall into that category if they want a bigger phone, because the S9 isn't,
phones just
too huge.
Definitely, phones just keep getting bigger and bigger, and it doesn't seem like they're going to stop. We're getting dangerously close to iPad mini territory. Still an iPhone user. I don't think I'd ever own a phone where the software was not made by the hardware manufacturer.
Right. Yeah, that TouchWiz overlay, and it's garbage.
Which is why the Google Pixel screams out to me. Just a few things why I'm more with Apple than I am with the Google Pixel, but the Google Pixel would be the only thing I really go to. Now, the Note 9 itself is a phenomenal phone and one I would absolutely see myself using every day. It's just the software behind it. I'm sure it's a great operating system, but all that bloatware and the non-native adaptability of the OS keeps me from jumping on it, but I can still recognize it's a phenomenal phone.
Yeah, and I think if Apple ever comes out with a phone that has something similar to the S Pen on it, then I would love that, to be honest. And if Apple ever released the rights of iMessage and FaceTime and all the things that makes the Apple ecosystem,
yep.
If they ever put that on Android, I would switch to the Pixel.
I'm sorry?
I would switch to the Pickle
in
a heartbeat.
Gotcha.
The Pixel, I mean, the pure Android experience, I had the Nexus 6, which was basically the Pixel before the Pixel came out. The pure Android experience is hard to beat. But then again, you have the Apple ecosystem, and that's what keeps people invested.
You got MacBooks and iPads and Apple TVs and stuff, Apple Music subscription software. They've definitely made a really good job of creating their own brand, and once you've bitten onto the Apple hook, even if you're able to swim away, you don't want to, because of how inclusive their hardware and their software is with each other and how well they talk to each other. For just fun stuff or on a professional level, they've really got a lot of the market cornered on that. A lot of people disagree with that, but Apple as a company has done a phenomenal job making themselves valuable, making people see value in that brand, and they do that with their inclusion. So it'd be hard to see them give up those rights for iMessage and FaceTime and Apple Music and stuff like that. As cool as that would be, that I think that gives up a huge part of Apple's just identity. It's like their fingerprint.
Exactly.
So
I mean, their call sign is design over function, and really I think their design even incorporates the way that their technology speaks to each other.
Yep.
And I would have a hard time switching, just because I mean the software that we use as digital media creators, you really can't beat it. The Adobe suite on OS is phenomenal.
It's Adobe, the Adobe suite, most of it is developed on Apple products
and then rewritten
and rewritten for Microsoft. Now I do use a PC and my MacBook in conjunction with each other in my professional world of photography, and the handoff between both is really good with the Adobe Cloud system and stuff like that. But the apps run smoother, they load quicker, they export quicker when I'm on my MacBook. Even though my MacBook is an i5, a 2-core i5, I'm usually able to export quicker and move through tasks quicker than my i7 7700K on my desktop. Now my desktop does have that graphics processor that helps it out a lot. That's kind of cheating, but just cohesion inside of the app. Usually they function better on the Apple, and the partnership with Adobe and Apple is huge, especially for creators.
And I'm a Final Cut user, and of course you can only use Final Cut on Apple products because it's made by Apple.
Right.
And again, that's that optimization that we were talking about, the Apple ecosystem. Final Cut is optimized to export and render faster than Premiere is.
Yes, it is.
So,
yes, it is.
My identity still lies with Apple until they release iMessage and FaceTime.
Yep.
But that's all I've got.
And that's all I've got.
Thanks for joining us this week. However you may be listening or watching, we appreciate you, and have a good night.
Bye-bye.